Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, new customers, when you sign up using promo code DNVR, this weekend you can place a $5 bet on any NFL playoff game in the divisional round. And when that team wins for you, you're going to get $200 in free bets as a result. Fantastic way to go with promo code DNVR. And thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. I'm your host, Patrick Lyons, and joining me here in just a little bit is David Laurila from FanGraphs, and FanGraphs Audio does some amazing work on that side. Previously with Baseball Prospectus, he's a guy who's been around the game for a while on the journalism side. I've actually told him this on a couple occasions that I've taken a couple pages out of his book. He has a fantastic Q&A series where, you know, he talks to a lot of pitchers about their pitch selection and some of the things that they're working on. And you'll probably see some overlap, or rather, if you check out some of his work, you'll probably notice that it is somewhat of an inspiration of my Banter from the Bench series. So I'm going to have a good time asking him some questions about Trevor Story, getting an update on him, because David is in the Boston area, grew up a Red Sox fan, so he knows a lot about that situation. And I did talk with him before the conversation we're about to have a little bit about the latest acquisition for the Colorado Rockies, who have been busy, as have a few other teams here in Major League Baseball. But the news on Tuesday broke just before we were broadcasting, and we briefly touched on it. Connor Seabold, Rockies add their 40th member to the 40-man roster. Connor Seabold, a lanky right-handed starting pitcher that is going to contend for a spot in the rotation. Now, as we discussed yesterday, there's 3 spots locked up with Freeland, Marquez, and Urania. Cinzatella, of course, will start the year on the IL as he recovers from ACL surgery. Hopefully he can be back by May. Maybe he'll be fully recovered and fully formed by June, and you can rely on him for the second half of the season to make a solid 14 to 16 starts. But until then, you are going to need something out of the 4th and 5 spot. Now, Seabold did have some elbow inflammation and some strain last season. That did cost him some time, but by all accounts, does have a really solid changeup. David even mentioned kind of offhandedly that, you know, that's a pitch that if it really can come to fruition, it could be above average pitch. And I think that would pair really well at Coors Field. We've seen Germán Marquez do that and use that pitch, you know, quite effectively. So Seabold, he's available there like Nick Mears was when the Texas Rangers signed Nathan Eovaldi. Well, the Red Sox signed Corey Kluber. They needed to free up some space, and Rockies jumped on it. They've done a really good job, I'd have to say, the last couple years of identifying the fact that, or realizing the fact that, free agent pitchers do not want to come to Colorado. So you're not going to sign free agents, and it may be hard to swing a fair trade, at least what they consider to be a fair trade. That can be a topic for a whole other day. But these players that are on the fringes, the Nick Mears, the Dinelson Lamet, Brent Suter, who's way better than a fringy player. But if you can go and take advantage of these players that, you know, some other teams don't value or really just have no room and get squeezed out, you might be able to find a diamond in the rough. So I don't think that it's a bad strategy. Might not be an exciting one, but it's not a bad strategy in general. Rockies also made a quiet move a few days ago in signing infielder Harold Castro. He's a guy that can play a little bit of shortstop. He is someone that I've seen in some projections suggest that he is due for a spot on the Rockies bench in place of Alan Trejo. I will have to believe it when I see it, partially because the defense isn't as strong for Castro. I think Alan Trejo can stick at shortstop if he needed to be for a long period of time. Castro, I'm not quite as convinced. Castro already does know how to play a little bit of an outfield in the past, especially during his time with Detroit, but he's got a little bit more pop in the bat. So you're getting more production on the offensive side, but you're trading that in for some lack of assurance, if you will, on the defensive side. And we know how much Colorado values defense. We saw how much it hurt them the first couple months last year. So we'll kind of wait and see what happens. He's also the most special, the most super of utility players, because he can also pitch. He's actually made 7 appearances as a pitcher. So no, you can crack your jokes about the Rockies maybe signing him because they know it's going to be a long year, and they need to have some position players pitch. We saw that last year with Brian Serven and first with Randall Grichuk pitching innings for the Rockies. But Harold Castro will be a factor and should get an invitation to Major League camp. Let's clean up a couple of transactions here across Major League Baseball because there are players still signing, and a lot of them are on minor league deals for the most part. And Duvall is the most recent guy here. In signs a 1 year, $7 million deal with some potential to increase upwards of $10 million. So he is another one of those players to plug right in to everything Boston's been trying to do. And they're kind of a mishmash of guys. And as you'll hear from David, it's an interesting group. It's similar to what the Cubs have been doing, picking up players here and there, a little bit all over the place. But nevertheless, it's an interesting roster. Will there be some cohesion? That kind of remains to be seen. We'll see what happens when they report to camp down there in Fort Myers. Speaking of the Cubs, Trey Mancini signs a 2-year deal worth $14 million. He also has an opt-out, which is strange for a short-term deal like that. But I think that's a lot of that has to do with some injury concerns, or obviously the health concerns with Trey Mancini beating cancer and any kind of issues that may be caused because of that. If Mancini can get 350 at bats this next season, then that's what triggers his opt-out. And he might end up staying in Chicago. He might enjoy it there. Right now, he's probably penciled in as their designated hitter. At first base will more than likely be Eric Hosmer, maybe a platoon between Hosmer and young prospect Matt Mervis. He's not that young, but he is a prospect nonetheless. Milwaukee picks up third baseman Brian Anderson, who can also play the corner outfield spots. Cincinnati gets starting pitcher Luke Weaver. Again, these aren't necessarily exciting signings by any means, but they are signings nonetheless. Andrew McCutchen is back in Pittsburgh. Susie talked about it briefly on Friday. Should mention it again. That's a $5 million deal for the 2013 National League MVP to return back to Pittsburgh. In Oakland, they pick up right-handed starter Shintaro Fujinama for a bargain, a steal. Now, you don't know what you're getting, but Oakland is confident, and I think a lot of people should be at what this guy has and his potential in general. $3.25 million, his 1-year deal. He's a 28-year-old pitcher from Japan, 6'6", can throw in the upper 90s. Again, we're talking about a starting pitcher. He's someone who was in the same draft class in Japan as Shohei Ohtani. So that's a nice chip on your shoulder to have, especially when you consider that he's only making $3.25 million. So Shintaro Fujinama is going to be interesting to watch next year. I believe Oakland does come to town to Colorado next season. And then, of course, if you want to visit Oakland Coliseum one last time, the Rockies will be going there in 2024. Minnesota Twins sticking in the central parts of the country. Minnesota's up to something, right? They're talking with Miami right now. They've got a plethora of starting pitchers. We know that Cy Young Award winner this past season, Sandy Alcantara, is going to command a lot in a trade. And the Marlins might even want to hold on to him, extend him out, keep him as part of a core of players if they feel like they can contend here in the next 3 to 4 years. I think they've got that far to go before they are a little bit more relevant. But Pablo Lopez is one of those names dangling around. We know that the Rockies had conversations about Brendan Rodgers for Edward Cabrera, but Lopez is the top guy because he has less club control and is going to be a free agent a lot sooner than many of the other Marlins starting pitchers. So the conversation is possibly Max Kepler coming from the Twins, maybe even Luis Arias, the guy who ended up blocking Aaron Judge from winning the Triple Crown. He won the AL batting title. I think he hit 316. Aaron Judge hit 311. So that's a good trivia question to remember. Hey, not only did Aaron Judge break the American League home run record with 62 in 22, but he also could have won the Triple Crown, and he did not because of Luis Arias. Twins, if they were to add Pablo Lopez, I mean, they already have a sneaky good starting rotation. It would be that much better, and Carlos Correa is back in the fold there. The Twins are a team to look out for and challenge Cleveland there. in the AL Central. White Sox, this is their last chance, I think, before they have to possibly regroup. But Minnesota could be the pick to click there in the AL Central if you're looking for some DraftKings Sportsbooks bets. Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Tyler Mahle, Kenta Maeda, top 4 guys in their rotation. Bailey Ober's there as well. I'm not as high on him. Chris Paddock is there as well. He did have Tommy John surgery last summer. So we might not really see anything from him until 2024. Lots of upside starters in AAA as well. And all of those starters, whether they're in AAA or big leaguers in camp for Minnesota, they will be caught by Mr. Papers himself, Tony Papers, Tony Two Bags, Tony Walters. We'll be catching them in spring training. You may have recalled he signed a minor league deal with the Minnesota Twins there a few weeks back. So kind of strange where Tony Walters' career has taken him. But when you're good as a receiver, pitch framer, game caller, working really well with pitchers, starting and relieving alike, Tony Walters, he's going to have a lot of jobs. He's a good guy. Also, shout out to Mike Talkman, who's back in the United States after playing this past season in South Korea. He did well. Didn't have one of those Roberto Ramos type seasons that Ramos had in 2020 with the LG Twins there. Talkman does sign with the Chicago Cubs on a minor league deal. So we might be seeing him again. Haven't seen him since he was with the San Francisco Giants there for a period of time. And then finally, the Miami Marlins, they've been attached to Yuli Gurriel to possibly play some first base, as well as Aroldis Chapman, a player that, has the domestic violence history in his past, similar to Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer obviously taking center stage right now this offseason, but Aroldis Chapman has some, has some character flaws, to say the least. Didn't show up for the Yankees there late in the season. So obviously a very talented player, still should have, 3 or 4 more years of really quality play. He's not that old. He can still pipe it in there in the upper 90s. But do you want your organization to be associated with a player like that, especially when Kim Ng, the first female general manager in professional baseball history, is in Major League Baseball history, I should say. Don't forget about Effa Manley from the Newark Bears. That's the Negro Leagues. But Kim Ng would have a lot of questions to answer in regards to signing a player with the track record and the baggage of a guy like Aroldis Chapman. But I'm super excited to get our guy, David Laurila, in here from FanGraphs. As I said, I love catching up with him, whether it's the winter meetings, Arizona Fall League. We're going to talk about Zac Veen a little bit. I've tried to parse out a little bit of the conversation from the 2007 World Series, which he wasn't quite covering the team at that point, but he was there for those games between the Red Sox and Rockies, and basically described it as, the Rockies had a period of time where they forgot how to lose. And during the 2007 World Series, they kind of remembered how to lose, unfortunately. And they've remembered how to do that, I think, just about ever since. So let's go ahead and get our guy, David Laurila, in here.
A fun little watch party here at the DNVR bar. David, we also have a bar here. In addition to being journalists and podcast hosts, we also have a cool bar where if you're a diehard or if you're a podcast guest like yourself, David, you get 15% off your entire tab on beers, 20% off all of the gear over at dnvrlocker.com, 20% off the party bus, different watch parties and events like that. It's at the corner of Colfax, New York. And next Tuesday at 3:30, we're going to open the doors a little bit early, get that presentation and the announcement of Todd Helton. We'll see if he gets in this year. If not, next year will be the year. We're saying that about the Broncos right now, and next year being their year. But it can be your time. It can be your year all year round with the Broncos Country Pale Ale. It's got the wonderful Colorado Crush logo, all Colorado ingredients, made here in Colorado by a Colorado company, 100% renewable energy. It's the way to go. If you want to get some of that, David, you got to go to breckbrew.com and go to their beer locator. You can actually find out where some of that is located because they sell it pretty much nationally. NFL playoff picture is locked in, as we know, divisional round. No Patriots for the first time in a very long time. Do you enjoy the times that the Patriots aren't front and center in the sports world up there in Boston, or is it okay to share a little bit between the Red Sox and Patriots? Because it's hard to share in Colorado. It's almost always about the Broncos and hardly ever about the Rockies.
Well, I grew up in Upper Michigan, Patrick, closer to Green Bay than Detroit. So I'm not a Patriots guy. I'm a Packers guy. And I'm saying that with a little bit of a sour feeling right now because they're not in the playoffs. They should be. So, yeah, the Broncos-Packers Super Bowl, we won't get one soon. We have had them, though, right? We had one.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Nothing is truer than DraftKings Sportsbook, where as we kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win, even if it's the big favorite. Go for it. Knock it out. You get $200 in free bets instantly when that team wins. They've got the stepped-up same-game parlays, so you can add a bunch of different legs, increase your odds. When you do that, you get all kinds of boosts up to 100% for that. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code DNVR because new customers, you can make a $5 bet. And when your NFL team wins this weekend, you get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, only with code DNVR. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Trevor Story got the modified Tommy John surgery, got the little brace there. Is there hope that he could return at some point this season? I think 5 to 6 months has been the estimate, but do you see him coming back or maybe not? Maybe you don't rush him at all.
Well, I mean, there's certainly hope. Chaim Bloom said that they hope to have him back. I don't think it will matter. The Red Sox aren't going to contend. I am sure that if he's healthy enough to play later in the year, he will be back on the roster. You need to see what he can do, how healthy he is. But if there are any questions about whether he's ready to come back, he's not coming back soon. They're not going to rush a guy with a team that's frankly not that great. I think the Red Sox are better than a lot of people here think they are, but in that division, they are not a serious contender, much as the Rockies have no way to keep up with the LAs. And sorry, Rockies fans, for saying this, but you probably know this. That division is really, really good, and Arizona is about to become really good. So, yeah, it's being a Rockies fan now, I think, be probably pretty tough.
Yes, it's a challenge to say the least. I was going to ask you about that with Boston because they've got those pieces there. I mean, they almost have a similar roster to the Cubs where they're just picking up veterans here and there, for some short-term deals, some on longer ones. And you're looking and go, you know what? Maybe if everybody goes out and has what they have over their course of their career or a career type season, maybe you can sneak in. But in that division, it's going to be really hard. Do you see them kind of projecting to be more times than not? And all the simulations you might go through in your head, are they kind of almost destined to be last place in the AL East next season?
I don't think they're destined to be in last place necessarily, but it wouldn't be a shock. Baltimore is on the verge of being very, very good. I think if there's a team that's going to slide back a little bit, it's Tampa Bay. They have a great front office. Year after year, they're better than they should be. But eventually that bubble almost has to burst when you look at their payroll and their roster. The Red Sox do have money. And I think they'll spend when the time comes. So I think the future is good, but the near term, not so good.
Are they? I haven't really heard their names in the mix for Ohtani next offseason. Dodgers are number one. Mets are always going to be in on everybody. Is it totally out of the question that Ohtani would go to Boston, or could the Red Sox decide they want to be players?
I mean, nothing is out of the question when you're a large market team, with deep pockets. The Red Sox just signed a notable Japanese player, one of the best players in NPB last year. Daisuke was there once upon a time.
That worked out.
The Red Sox have had a lot of Japanese players, so I think Boston is a good market. Koji Uehara was great. Junichi Tozawa wasn't great, but he was a credible big league pitcher. So, yes, Sawamura was just there. Maybe they're all whispering to Shohei that, hey, Boston's a really great place. Or maybe Shohei can come to Coors and hit 75 home runs.
Well, if anyone's going to whisper in Shohei Ohtani's ear from Japan, it would have to be Kaz Matsui because coincidentally, he's the last Japanese-born player to be on the Rockies, and that was back in 2007, bringing it all the way back around. So that's kind of wild to think that it goes back that far. I know the Red Sox have kind of they need a shortstop. They kind of need a second baseman unless Kike Hernandez fills in at one of those spots. I know Jerkson Profar has been a free agent. That the Red Sox have been rumored in. I've kind of thrown out the idea of Jose Iglesias. I know he finished up 2021 there and would have been great on the postseason roster. Obviously, they couldn't have added him in that circumstance, but Jose Iglesias was really solid for the Rockies last year. Do you see the Boston going, the Iglesias route? Is it going to be Andrelton Simmons, Elvis Andrews, or maybe a second baseman, and you do put Kike Hernandez at shortstop?
I don't think they want Hernandez at short. I think they want him in center or second. I'd love to have Iglesias there. You can probably see I'm wearing my Portland Sea Dogs hoodie. Jose Iglesias used to be a Portland Sea Dog. I think that's where I first met him. What a wonderful, wonderful defensive player. Like Hall of Fame quality defender. Obviously not the bat. Rockies fans know that. Yeah, I would love to see Jose Iglesias in Boston.
Yeah, he was fun to cover last year. I mean, he was a little secluded, maybe isn't the word, but he wasn't totally out there and always available. But whenever he was, always entertaining, interesting. He was probably the most enjoyable player that I watched last year, which does say something about the Rockies. But he's just old school in that way. He's like an old school shortstop. So I think he'd be a good replacement for now until Story comes back. I mean, probably not this year, but could you see Story being like a stopgap solution back at shortstop if all goes well with the elbow surgery and kind of keeps the position warm until their top shortstop prospect Marcelo Mayer is ready? Is that something that could be in the cards for next year?
Yeah, I don't think that's the plan. I think with this injury, he'll be back at second. I think Marcelo Mayer, I believe, is the correct pronunciation. He has a chance to be a star, right? But he's young and there's a lot of pressure on him already. The Red Sox have another prospect who I wrote about recently named Ceddanne Rafaela, who is there were people in the Red Sox organization, and I've quoted them on this. People in their developmental system think he's their best defensive outfielder and arguably their best defensive infielder.
Wow.
This is as a prospect. So stopgap, you would think, well, if he's big league ready, and he's probably not. He played in Portland the second half of this year. Well, you think, well, shortstop. But they need a center fielder, so. In terms of Red Sox talk, Red Sox stories, I think that's far more exciting than losing Connor Siebold to the trade.
There you go. You're a witty man. You're jabbing here, and that's okay. We're the punching bag sometimes. I'll say this again. Your sense of humor comes out a lot in your writing. Again, check that out over at FanGraphs. You will not be sorry. Again, you can learn a little more about Zidane there. I love that in these articles and with these conversations, you will include some random hitter-pitcher matchups. And that's always fun with a little bit of wordplay. There was one earlier in the offseason, a holiday version where Matt Holliday, he's 3 for 11 against John Garland. Holliday, Garland, also both Rockies. And Jamie Carroll went 2 for 4 against Neftali Feliz. Carroll, Feliz. It's witty. Do you have like just a database of fun wordplay and that's just ready to go for the next 2 years? Are you constantly looking for these interesting matchups?
No, I'm just a good time waster, Patrick. My brain works in funny ways, and I will sit down and spend too much time looking for things that I think are clever, hoping that somebody notices what they are.
That's me. It works. There you go. If you can make an impact on only one person, David, it's probably only one, but it is me. You found that person. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, so a program note for Rockies fans. I talked to Zac Veen during the Fall League, and I actually asked Bill Schmidt about him when I got my not so great answers during the GM meetings. I talked to him about Veen, and he had more to say there. And just this morning, I was writing up that story, so I will write about Zac Veen's speed game, which is what I wanted to talk to Zac about, because he stole, 65 bags this year, I think.
Yeah, it was impressive. Definitely most in the system, most in the Arizona Fall League. It's wild because the report on him, coming out of that draft in 2020 was a lot about how his power had come along, and he put on a hitting display during the Under Armour game that they had at Wrigley's Field, or excuse me, the Perfect Game, showcase at Wrigley Field, and yet the power is there, but it might not be that 30, 35 home run power, but the speed has been like off the charts. It's been outstanding.
Right, and will he keep running as he ages? Speed is apparently going to be a bigger part of the game going forward. At least MLB is trying to make it that way. It's being talked up a lot. So a guy who runs well, that's a great fit. I did ask Schmidt if he wants his players to run a lot. He didn't really answer that question. He was a little vague there too. But clearly there are players who can run, and the minors ran. I talked to a scout since then who said, well, that's not surprising. The Rockies have had players who run a lot in the minors, and they either don't make the majors or they get to the majors and don't run as much. So what will that mean to guys like Zac Veen? We don't know.
Yeah, I hope they.
But I think if Zac Veen becomes the next, and I'm having trouble pulling out a classic Rockies speed guy who couldn't hit off the top of my head.
Well, you don't want to say Juan Pierre exactly, but maybe that would work.
Juan Pierre, Patrick, was an underrated player. You look at his numbers; he actually was not that bad. He just didn't hit home runs.
I'm a Pierre fan. No, I have to make no qualms about it. But he had the speed. Hit a little bit for average. Obviously, had a lot of contact, but obviously not the power. Veen will probably have more home runs in his first 2 seasons than Juan Pierre has had his entire career. But
I think the Rockies are counting on Veen to hit for power. They don't want him to come up and have a 380 slugging percentage and 10 home runs. That is not worthy of what was the 8th or 9th overall pick 2 years ago?
9th, yeah.
That wouldn't do it. He will have to hit. I think he will hit.
Yeah, no, I think he will too. I mean, he is a baseball rat. Like, he's basically an outfield and left-handed version of Nolan Arenado in so many ways, it seems like. So they have a lot in common with that, and we've got a lot in common with Pins and Aces, because that's another Colorado company making some amazing golf gear, apparel, hats. They've got beer sleeves. David, I don't know if you've been a big golfer or golfed a little bit. That's kind of a key piece. Take a couple clubs out, put in a sleeve that you can put all your beers in there, keep them cold as you're going around on 18 holes. It's an ingenious invention. At pinsandaces.com, they're going to give you 15% off when you use promo code Pins and Aces, and you're going to get free shipping with that as well. Backus and Schenker, one of our newest sponsors, they're amazing because they're here to help, especially if you've been hurt. They do amazing job for those who've been seriously injured in Colorado over the last 25 years. They got 30 lawyers, 100 folks covering for them in their staff. All of their support is free until you win money. No upfront fee to even speak with them. It's fantastic. Look, it's free because they want to win you money, and you don't have to pay a cent before that. They won over $1 billion in cases, and they've got locations all over the entire Denver metro area: Denver, Aurora, Englewood, and now even in northern Colorado, in Fort Collins. They help with folks with all kinds of injury cases that weren't your fault. Car accidents, rideshare, motorcycle, pedestrians, trucks. If they can help you out if you've been injured at work. And the phone number is super easy that I might even have to quiz you on it, David, after the show. It's 222-2222. That's it. All you got to remember is Xander Bogaerts. 222-2222. Backus and Schenker always wins for you.
Yeah, Patrick, to my credit, I own a Xander Bogaerts t-shirt. And I made sure that I bought it after his rookie year, knowing he was going to change his number. And I can't tell you what his original number was, but that's the one I wanted, and that's the one I have.
Yeah, there's a Kyle Freeland number 31 jersey out there somewhere that I've seen. I think I've even seen it on eBay that I haven't really pulled the trigger on yet. But like that was his original number. It's a quirky thing to have when it's not the jersey that a player is known for.
And you mentioned Nolan Arenado. Would I be piling on if I mentioned that when I had St. Louis Post-Dispatch beat writer Derek Gould on our podcast recently, he told me that he thinks Arenado is the best player in baseball, the best all-around player, or maybe he said in the National League.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like that.
Yeah, no, we don't allow people to say the NA word. It is banned from so we will bleep you out in post-production. So no, we're allowed to talk about Nolan Arenado and Derek Gould from Boulder. So he's actually a Colorado guy.
That's right. Yes.
He's a legendary dude. I'm sure he's been to shows at Red Rocks. I have been. I got tickets for Red Rocks once for $15, and that was thanks to Game Time Tickets. It's the hottest ticketing site that makes it easier to buy tickets. You can get, if you're going to like, let's say a Red Sox game or Rockies game, if you wait until about an hour until first pitch, a lot of those ticket brokers or people who just can't go to the event, they're just going to try to get something for it. So the prices are going to drop up to 60% off the face value, and Game Time Tickets is going to hook you up in that way. That's what you want to use for concerts, basketball, baseball, you name it. They got some fantastic seats year-round, season-long. Join over 15 million folks who've downloaded the Game Time app to score the best seats to all their favorite events. Hit the link in our description to save. It's a good way that they'll say thank you if you use the link in our description, because it's a good way to kind of pass the buck around a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about some outfielders on your Hall of Fame ballot. We've kind of been highlighting a couple players each and every day in this kind of final week before the official announcement on Tuesday. But Bobby Abreu and Andrew Jones, they're players who, if I were to have a ballot, or when I have a ballot, although these guys wouldn't be on it, I'd vote for those two gentlemen. I don't know if you've ever looked back on Baseball Reference to like 1935, the ballot. Actually, that predates the first year. I think 1936 was the first ballot. But if you look at 1952, there's a list of like 25 guys who eventually got into the Hall of Fame at some point, which makes you think like there's at least 10 Hall of Famers that will be Hall of Famers at some point on this ballot. So you should probably be picking about 10, especially if you feel that way. And I know you have, because you use all 10 of your votes this year.
I have used all 10 all 3 years. That's no guarantee that I always will.
Sure.
I quoted another writer, the Athletics C. Trent Rosecrans, in my column this Sunday when he explained his votes, and he voted for 10. He said that he errs on the side of inclusion for the Hall of Fame ballot, and I thought that was a great way of putting it. I think I don't think there's any reason to vote for two guys, thinking that, you know, the Abreu's, the Beltrans, the Heltons aren't worthy because they're not Willie Mays. I think that's an absurd thing to do. I think most fans have their players they love. They would like to have them at least get the votes, even if they don't get inclusion. So,
yeah, no, I don't consider myself a big Hall guy, but I'm definitely not a small Hall guy. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. But in that case, if you're going to err on the side of including someone, and you know, between guys like Andrew Jones and Bobby Abreu, Jones I think has the better case, and he's polling much higher, and he'll probably get in before his 10 years are up. And I think that was because he had the better peaks, right? He was part of those Atlanta teams, 5-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove Award winner. I mean, a lot of people have him down as quite possibly the greatest defensive center fielder of all time, or at least of that generation. If you didn't see Willie Mays play, you know, obviously you can only go based on what you've seen, and he's been one of the best. One of the most interesting things I read, and this was in Jay Jaffe's column, also a great writer for FanGraphs, about Andrew Jones. Quote, he went to Japan with a traveling team at 11 years old, 1 year before Hensley Mullins became the first Curacao-born player with the Yankees in 1989. I also bring that up because Hensley Bam Bam Mullins is now the hitting coach of the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, I talked to Hensley Mullins during the winter meetings, I guess it would have been.
World
I
Baseball
had never
Classic.
met Bam Bam. I've heard a lot of great things about him. He was very personable. And he had some interesting things to say about, the org he's going to and how they need to upgrade their, hitting development program.
Yeah, that was nice.
And the Rockies have made changes there too. Certainly,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping that one of his former players when he was with the Mets, Dom Smith, would come over. Rockies were looking for a left-handed bat. He, of course, signed a 1-year deal with the Nationals. Bobby Abreu's case is a little bit different. He is a player that if he, was from the 1940s or 50s, the sabermetric community would rally around. And I'm a Saber member, a board member, in fact, the Rocky Mountain chapter here in Denver. But he's a player that, again, sabermetrically speaking, you look at all the numbers and you crunch it here and there. You go, wow, this guy was almost criminally underappreciated. Was only a 2-time All-Star, only won the Silver Slugger Award 1 time. He did get MVP votes in 7 different seasons, but was a .291 hitter, short of 2,500 hits, short of 300 home runs, but he stole 400 bases and had a .395 career on-base percentage. Just did not swing at a ton of pitches, but was effective whenever he did. According to Jaws, he's only 21st amongst right fielders, but right field, there's a lot of legendary players. He's behind Sammy Sosa and Dave Winfield, a Hall of Famer, but just ahead of Vlad Guerrero Sr., a Hall of Famer, Barry Bonds, and another guy in your ballot, Gary Sheffield. So Abreu's case, I think you voted for him, right? Just because, again, there's a full body of work there for him.
No, I have. I'm a big Abreu fan. I tweet about him way too often. I actually think he had a better career than Andrew Jones.
Wow.
I believe he has a higher OPS plus. I hope I'm not wrong in saying that. I've probably sounded like an idiot numerous times here. I hope I'm not doing it again. Power and defense. Andrew Jones clearly hasn't beat, and then he fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
His career is basically the polar opposite in many ways of Dwight Evans, who doesn't seem to be getting enough credit on Veterans Committee, Era Committee ballots these days. Evans was sort of an average player. His first half of his career was a lot better than the second half of Andrew Jones's career. But he wasn't a great player until the second half. And then he was just a phenomenal hitter. He had a Bobby Abreu-like on-base percentage, and he was a great defender in right. And he hit home runs.
Yeah, I like that comparison a lot.
My Dwight Evans.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that if you go back, and even if you are right, and I assume you're right about the OPS plus question there between him, Abreu and Andrew Jones. Even if you are right, you might as well just tweet about Bobby Abreu again. Just get that information out there. Help anyone who may be on the fence with that. Final question. Again, love your coverage of the Red Sox and on FanGraphs. World Baseball Classic. What's your thought on that? Because we're obviously of an older generation in which this didn't exist. So we've seen it kind of blossom from, hey, let's make this more of a world game as it should be. And see if we can capitalize on some of the enthusiasm that the World Cup gets as an international game. But what's your take on the World Baseball Classic as far as a tournament and MLB's buy-in to it and the players' buy-in, which seems to be really high?
Well, it's fun, certainly. The timing is weird. You have to really do it during spring training, when the players are, working out. But it disrupts from spring training, getting teams ready. So it's imperfect. I think it's imperfect that you have players who aren't natives of the country playing on some of the teams. So there are imperfections, but as far as a fan experience and selling the game, I think it's great. But do you need to sell the game in Japan and Korea and the Dominican Republic?
Great point.
You don't. I think maybe like baseball in Europe, where the game is growing more, I think is big, but you can't really have teams there. You don't, if Bobby Thompson was still alive, he'd probably play for Scotland. But how many? Who else would Scotland have, right?
Yeah,
I assume you know that Bobby Thompson was born in Glasgow.
Sure, of course. And Ralph Branca was born probably in America somewhere. But yes, yeah. No, well, Bruce Bochy was supposed to be the coach of France. I could have sworn, and I just don't think they ended up qualifying. I mean, you bring up a good point about stretching the game out, obviously into other countries and whatnot. But is the juice worth the squeeze? Because you know who's going to be in it with the major countries, and there's already absolute buy-in from those places. So how do you get those other teams in? It's almost like the work that's being done on the World Baseball Classic. A lot of it's going on behind the scenes. Like they did have qualifiers, in Germany and I think Italy, during this off season or late in the year with a lot of minor league guys and college athletes and whatnot. And I think that's good. We're not seeing it necessarily in America as much. So I'm curious to know how much MLB is able to get those qualifying tournaments with teams like Great Britain or Germany or Scotland involved in airing it in those countries. So a lot of work still has to be done, but it's fun. And I want to be in the building for one of those games because, again, the environment is absolutely electric.
Yeah, I want to see, Patrick, how the Netherlands could grow their game better because with the players from Curacao especially, they're always very competitive. And I guess if you grow up in the Netherlands, you're going to play soccer, right? But maybe young, good athletes who just simply don't have the feet, that natural talent, you would think maybe, well, let's play baseball. Let's be representative beyond the Curacao component.
Yeah, it's something that will have to take maybe 50 years until we really see all the fruits of this labor to really come to fruition. In the meantime, still a wonderful tournament. Are you going to be covering any of those games? Do you know of right now?
I will not be covering those games. I do need to sit down and map out my trip to Phoenix for spring training. Salt River Fields is always on my list of places that I have to go. So maybe we will cross paths in about 2 months.
All right. So maybe we'll go off on a final note here, since you've hurt so many people that are Rockies fans with your words on this show. Salt River Fields, is that a better spring training complex than what the Red Sox have in Fort Myers?
Yes.
Let's go.
It is also better than Sloan Park.
Oh, now there you go. That's bonus points right there.
No, I love Salt River Fields at Talking Stick. I'm not saying that to get onto your good graces. I love that ballpark.
Check is in the mail. Don't worry. Or Venmo. We'll talk about it off air. We'll see how I need to get you the proper funds there for saying that. Appreciate that, David. Let folks know where they can find you. Again, we mentioned FanGraphs a ton, but mention it again. Mention it on Twitter. Bug him about Bobby Abreu stuff. Go ahead and plug away your stuff, David.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of plugging to do. I write for FanGraphs. I will be surprised if anybody watching this doesn't know FanGraphs. On Twitter, I can just go with my first name, last name, and then QA, because I do a lot of Q&As. That's about it.
Yeah. Always provide great Qs with some great As. So we appreciate that, David. At DNVR_Rockies is where we're at on Twitter. At Patrick D. Lyons is my handle on Twitter. This has been wonderful. This has been momentous, David. But unfortunately, you know what they say about momentum? They say it's only as good as your next show. So we will talk to you tomorrow at 11 a.m. on the DNVR Sports Channel on YouTube.